The King of Nice is definitely a very interesting episode of The Simpsons. It felt a little awkward, but actually the position it took and the messages it gave and my reading of it is not at all what I was expecting. This is the fourth episode of the 34th season of The Simpsons. This is directed by Debbie Mahan, and this is, without question, a parody of The Ellen Show and the relatively recent issues with everything that led to the show being cancelled. And I don't want to give away too much just now, but with a spoiler warning, I will go into detail about things that I found to be surprising and the messages that the episode delivered. Messages, with the way that I've read them, that I wasn't expecting. Krusty is taking the place of Ellen. He has a show called Krusty. He even kind of dresses like Ellen. His hair is quite similar. They're not trying to mask this parody at all. And Marge ends up getting a job there, and she's working as a segment producer. Things are going really well to begin with, but as the tension increases and her demands to produce more work increases, she becomes not very nice. And that's not what I was expecting. That's not the most surprising thing, but that's not what I was expecting. I was expecting everything to be from Krusty, but actually Krusty was perfectly fine and definitely visually very interesting. Very well animated episode. I think they did a great job designing the studio space, and having watched a lot of episodes of Ellen, I thought maybe a little bit too soon. It did feel a little bit awkward. There were times when I was thinking, are they really doing this now? But at the same time, as the episode progressed, I began to realise that they're actually not necessarily taking sides. And I'll discuss that with a spoiler warning, why I was led to believe that. But in general, it's a good episode. At the end of the day, even if you're unaware of what it's parodying or the issues with Ellen, it's an episode about people not treating each other nicely and how you shouldn't do that, and how in certain industries some people by default are very nasty towards other people, and you can't do that. That's not okay. And at the end of the day, that's the message. And regardless of whether it's too soon or not, it's always a really important message. And I think they did a pretty good job with it. And I generally liked the episode. So spoilers from now, I'll discuss the elements that I hadn't expected and why I think they've actually taken a very sensible approach with it. So spoilers from now. As I touched upon, Krusty isn't the one with the bad attitude. When I started watching it, I thought, okay, here we have Krusty representing Ellen. He's going to lose his cool with his staff and it's going to be very blatant. But no, it's not. It's actually, well, there are several people, one of whom is Marge. The other person is the person who employed Marge. And I like the fact that they're initially saying multiple people behind the scenes can be very bitter, very demanding, very above their station, and think that they have the right to talk down to everybody. I don't think they're saying it wasn't Ellen, it was the people behind the scenes. I absolutely don't think that's the position they're going with. But I do think they're saying that not everybody is innocent in everything, in any walk of life. And behind the scenes, there are more people who push the buttons, who demand things further up the chain, and that anger and frustration or nastiness gets passed down. And I like the fact that they're kind of suggesting, at least with my reading of it, that there may be more than one person to blame. I also really like the speech Marge gave. I don't think it works as an excuse, but Marge gave a speech to the viewers and to the audience that basically said, when you're working in this high intensity, demanding environment where everything is quick, everything has to be perfect, there's no room for mistake, and you're competing with so many other shows and people, it has to be, all things considered, perfect. People can, be at the end of their tether. They can be snapping constantly because they're under so much pressure and stress. And Marge said, to paraphrase, it can turn nice people nasty. Again, I don't think The Simpsons is saying, look, this is an excuse that we're going to use. If anybody, such as Ellen, behaves like this, it's because it's a high-pressure environment. But I think they are saying it doesn't necessarily mean that a person is nasty. It means that they've been in an environment that has fueled that has created that. And again, I think they took a pretty sensible stance there, because that is very true. If you're in an environment where everybody is so intense and uptight and everything has to be perfect, and if you make one mistake, you're fired, people are going to be on edge. They're going to be snapping. They're going to be getting at each other's throats because their necks are on the line. And then, they're getting it from higher up and they're getting it from higher up. And I think that's what they're kind of trying to say here, that people who maybe are not necessarily very nice, it might not be who they are. It might be a product of the environment, because that kind of environment isn't natural and it isn't pleasant. I'm generalizing, but I think they did a good thing to kind of say, maybe in some circumstances, this nastiness could be a product of the environment. And I think that was a really sensible thing for the show to do. Again, I don't think they were saying, hey, this is an Ellen parody, but now we're going to say it wasn't Ellen's fault, it was the product of the environment. But that could also be the case. But they took a really good stance with that, a really good position. Definitely provided some food for thought. And at the end of the day, it was much more sensible for them to do that than to completely just parody the whole situation without having any kind of message or food for thought at all. And I think it worked very well. So it was an enjoyable episode. It was an unexpected episode. And it was unpredictable. And ultimately, I think they did a really good job with the King of Nice.